He was a nobody, a college dropout with nothing but a laptop, a dream, and an obsession with gorillas. What happened next changed the face of Silicon Valley forever. This is the untold story of Jaxon Grey, the man who went from the brink of failure to the creator of a code that would reshape the world of technology. But his journey didn't start in boardrooms or with million-dollar investments. It started with one dream and an unlikely inspiration: gorillas. And it all began in the quiet corners of the tech world, where one dropout's obsession led to the creation of the Gorilla Code, a code that would make him a tech titan. But first, he had to face the wilderness, both inside and out. Jaxon sat in the crowded lecture hall, his mind miles away from the professor's monotonous lecture. The words blurred in his mind, his thoughts drifting to the next line of code he was itching to write. The pressure of expectations weighed heavily on him, but nothing seemed to click. He was no stranger to the feeling of not fitting in, of being misunderstood. At MIT, it was like everyone had their place, their purpose, except for him. Jaxon couldn't follow the rules the way they wanted him to. The rigid structure, the lectures, the assignments, it wasn't for him. Despite his brilliant mind, despite the spark of creativity he knew he had, the grades weren't there. His professors didn't see what he saw. To them, Jaxon was just another restless student, too wild, too unpredictable, too unfocused. In the end, the decision was made. Jaxon was kicked out. He packed up his things with a sense of finality, his dreams of academic success slipping through his fingers. His parents, who had always expected him to excel, were devastated. They couldn't understand why he couldn't just fit in, do what was expected of him. They asked what went wrong, but Jaxon didn't have the answers. It wasn't just about the failure. It was the feeling that he didn't belong, not just in MIT, but in this world of endless competition and unrelenting expectations. That night, after he had left the university behind, Jaxon stood on a balcony, staring at the night sky, thinking about his next move. He felt a strange kind of clarity. Maybe he was never meant for this traditional path. Maybe there was another way. He opened his laptop, the glow of the screen lighting up his face. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. But this time, it wasn't the code for a project that would be graded. It was something else, something bigger, the kind of idea that could only come from someone who had nothing to lose. In that moment, he decided he wasn't going to follow the rules. He was going to break them. Jaxon knew he needed a break from the chaos of his life, so he booked a flight to Rwanda. He had always been fascinated by gorillas, their strength, their intelligence, their complex social structures. There was something about them that spoke to him on a deeper level. Maybe it was their raw authenticity, their simplicity in a world so full of noise. The jungle was quiet. The sounds of the world outside seemed to fade away as he trekked through dense greenery, following the guides who knew the land. Every step felt like a step into another world, far removed from the pressures and failures that had defined his past. When he finally came face to face with a gorilla, something shifted. There was a calmness in its eyes, an intelligence that couldn't be denied. As the great creature moved through the forest with deliberate purpose, Jaxon couldn't help but marvel at how the gorillas worked together, the way they communicated, the subtle signals they exchanged, the way the group functioned as a unit. It was all so primal, yet so sophisticated. He spent days observing them, studying how their society functioned. They weren't just animals. They were problem solvers, thinkers, builders of their own world. Jaxon found himself writing down notes furiously, jotting down ideas that came to him in bursts of inspiration. The more he watched, the more he began to think, what if we could model artificial intelligence after the way gorillas think, behave, and collaborate? His obsession deepened. While others around him were studying traditional human cognitive models for AI, Jaxon began to see something different. He saw the potential in simplicity, in the raw intelligence of nature. The way gorillas solved problems without complex algorithms or rigid structures intrigued him. Maybe there was a better way, one that didn't rely on human-centered logic, but instead harnessed the power of the untamed mind. The more time he spent in the jungle, the more convinced he became. His failure at MIT no longer seemed like the end of his dreams. It felt like the beginning of something bigger, something that had been waiting for him to discover. It wasn't just about building smarter machines. It was about building machines that understood the world like gorillas did. Instinctively, adaptively, and without the constraints of conventional thinking. And that, Jaxon believed, was the key to something revolutionary. Back in his small apartment, Jaxon set up a makeshift lab. He cleared the clutter off his desk, placed his laptop in front of him, and started typing. His mind was buzzing with the ideas he'd collected in the jungle, and now it was time to put them into code. He called it SimianNet, an AI algorithm inspired by the way gorillas interacted with each other. Instead of relying on structured, human-like logic, Jaxon designed the code to function more like the group dynamics of a gorilla troop. The goal was simple: create an AI that could learn in a more intuitive, flexible way. A system that could adapt to its environment and solve problems the way gorillas did, without needing every detail mapped out in advance. The first few weeks were slow. The code was messy, disjointed, and far from perfect. Jaxon felt like he was coding in the dark, trying to teach a machine to think in a way that no one had tried before. But he didn't stop. Every failed attempt, every error message, only pushed him harder. He believed in the vision, a vision that others didn't quite understand yet. Late one night, after hours of trial and error, something clicked. He tested SimianNet on a simple problem: pattern recognition. The AI, instead of following the rules, seemed to learn by observing, adapting, and predicting based on the patterns it saw around it. It wasn't perfect, but it was different. It was alive in a way Jaxon had never seen before in code. He couldn't believe it. This wasn't just another algorithm. It was a new way of thinking about AI, one that didn't rely on rigid programming. This was something that could evolve, adapt, and grow, just like a gorilla in the wild. Jaxon spent every waking hour refining it, tweaking the code, and feeding it more problems to solve. His neighbors complained about the noise from his late-night coding sessions, but Jaxon was too focused to care. He knew he was onto something huge. SimianNet wasn't just another AI model. It had the potential to change everything. But there was one problem: no one seemed to care. His friends laughed when he showed them the code, dismissing it as another wild idea. Investors who had once shown interest turned him down. Jaxon began to wonder if maybe they were right. Maybe it was just another failure waiting to happen. But then, one day, a breakthrough came. It came from a forum on AI and machine learning. A small, niche group of developers who were open to unconventional ideas. One of them took notice of SimianNet, tested it, and saw its potential. They contacted Jaxon, asking if they could implement his algorithm in a stock trading bot. Desperate for validation, Jaxon agreed, not expecting much. But when the bot started outperforming some of the most advanced trading algorithms on the market, Jaxon knew he had created something extraordinary. The call from the forum's users was just the beginning. SimianNet was about to get its first real test in the world, and it was going to change everything. Jaxon couldn't believe what he was seeing. The stock trading bot, powered by SimianNet, wasn't just performing well. It was outperforming Wall Street's top algorithms. Numbers flashed on the screen, showing consistent profits that even seasoned traders couldn't explain. Word spread quickly across the forum, and soon people started reaching out, eager to use his technology. But Jaxon didn't expect this level of attention. As the results came in, it wasn't long before major players in the tech world took notice. His inbox was flooded with messages from Silicon Valley giants. Google, Tesla, and even DARPA reached out, offering him deals, partnerships, and millions in funding. But Jaxon wasn't interested. He hadn't created SimianNet to sell it. He wasn't interested in becoming just another cog in the corporate machine. He had a vision for this technology, and he knew that vision wasn't aligned with the interests of the tech giants who were now knocking on his door. Still, the attention was hard to ignore. He was being courted by some of the most powerful companies in the world, yet Jaxon remained hesitant. What was more important, building something for the greater good or making millions and securing his future? The turning point came when a well-known competitor in the AI field announced they were working on a similar project. But unlike Jaxon, they were pushing the technology into military applications, using AI to control drones and surveillance systems. That's when Jaxon realized the true value of what he had created. It wasn't just about stock trading or financial markets, it was about something bigger. His AI could be used for good, not just profit. It could be used in healthcare, education, environmental conservation. It could change the world, but he needed control over it. He couldn't let it be twisted into something dark and dangerous. Jaxon turned down the offers from the tech giants, instead deciding to build something of his own. He wanted to create a company that would focus on ethical AI, a company that would use SimianNet to improve the world. He named it Primal Core, a nod to the primal intelligence that inspired his breakthrough. But even as he started building his empire, the challenges only grew. There were other companies, smaller, scrappy startups, who were also working on their own versions of his technology. Many tried to steal his code, reverse engineer it, and launch competing products. But they couldn't replicate what Jaxon had done. His genius wasn't just in the code, it was in the vision behind it. And that vision couldn't be copied. The pressure mounted as the stakes got higher. Jaxon knew he was on the verge of something huge, but the competition was fierce, and the world was watching. He had to make his next move carefully. This wasn't just about proving the power of SimianNet anymore. It was about proving that one person, armed with an idea and a vision, could change the world. As Primal Core began to gain traction, the spotlight on Jaxon grew brighter. Tech giants who once tried to woo him with flashy deals now found themselves scrambling to catch up. The simplicity and adaptability of SimianNet were unmatched, and despite their resources, they couldn't replicate its success. But Jaxon's victory didn't come without its share of challenges. He found himself in a fierce battle with rival companies who were desperate to steal his thunder. One particular competitor, a well-established AI firm, launched a product that seemed eerily similar to his SimianNet model. They claimed to have developed a more advanced version of his algorithm, one that supposedly exceeded Jaxon's in every way. The tech community buzzed with speculation. Would Jaxon's invention be overtaken by a bigger player with more resources? Would the guerrilla code finally meet its match? Jaxon wasn't one to back down. He knew that the true power of SimianNet wasn't just in the algorithm, it was in how it could learn, adapt, and evolve. And he wasn't about to let anyone hijack that. He filed a lawsuit against the rival company, citing patent infringement and unethical practices. The legal battle was intense, with millions of dollars at stake. But Jaxon fought not just for his code, but for the very principles he had built Primal Core on. The world needed to understand that this technology wasn't just for profit. It was a tool for progress, for the betterment of society. The lawsuit drew massive media attention. Everyone was watching, the tech world, investors, and even the general public. People were drawn to Jaxon's story, how a dropout with a dream had taken on the big players and was holding his ground. The underdog was winning, and it felt like the tech world was rooting for him. The court case eventually went in Jaxon's favor. He had proven that his work was original and that his vision for ethical AI was worth fighting for. The victory sent shockwaves through the industry, and Jaxon's reputation as a leader in ethical technology solidified. But even as he celebrated the win, Jaxon knew this was just the beginning. He wasn't just going to sit back and relax. He had a bigger mission in mind, to push the boundaries of what SimianNet could do. With the victory in court, Jaxon's influence grew exponentially. His name became synonymous with innovation, integrity, and ethical technology. He started giving talks at conferences, speaking out about the importance of responsible AI and the dangers of using technology for manipulation or control. The world had seen the power of the guerrilla code, and it was clear that Jaxon Grey was no longer just an underdog. He was a force to be reckoned with. But the fight wasn't over yet. Jaxon had proven that anyone, no matter their background, could make a difference. And as he looked ahead, he knew the real challenge had just begun: to keep pushing the boundaries of innovation and to ensure that technology served humanity, not the other way around. As Jaxon's reputation grew, so did the demand for Primal Core's technology. The ethical AI movement he had sparked was gaining momentum, and the tech world was starting to take notice. But while the attention was flattering, Jaxon wasn't interested in simply being a name people admired from a distance. He wanted to make a real impact, not just in Silicon Valley, but on a global scale. With his legal battles behind him and his product proven, Jaxon poured his energy into expanding Primal Core. But he wasn't interested in making just another AI product. His vision for the company went far beyond stock trading bots or surveillance systems. He wanted to create AI that could make a difference, real, tangible change in people's lives. He started with healthcare. Jaxon knew the potential of AI in diagnosing diseases, predicting health trends, and even developing new treatments. His team at Primal Core began collaborating with medical professionals, working on a project to use SimianNet to detect early signs of diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's, by analyzing patterns in medical data that even the most experienced doctors might miss. Early trials were promising, and the results were revolutionary. Next, Jaxon turned his attention to education. AI had the potential to transform how students learned, making education more personalized and accessible. With SimianNet, the company developed learning tools that adapted to each student's pace, strengths, and weaknesses. The idea wasn't to replace teachers, but to empower them, to provide more targeted support to students who needed it most. But Jaxon didn't stop there. He was determined to use Primal Core to protect the planet. His team worked on projects that used AI to monitor and prevent illegal logging, track endangered species, and analyze climate data to predict natural disasters. Jaxon's vision was becoming a reality. Primal Core wasn't just building technology for profit, it was creating tools for a better world. Despite the overwhelming success of his ventures, Jaxon remained a man of few words. He continued to wear his hoodie, deliver TED Talks that felt more like personal reflections, and avoid the glamour of Silicon Valley's star-studded events. His focus was clear. Primal Core was not about him, it was about the future of technology and its role in improving lives. Soon, more and more companies began to adopt SimianNet for their own purposes. But Jaxon made sure they adhered to the same ethical guidelines that had always guided Primal Core. He created a set of principles that every partner company had to agree to before using his AI, ensuring that the technology was used for good. But even as the company expanded, Jaxon remained true to his roots. He made sure that his team stayed small, his vision stayed focused, and his purpose remained clear: to create AI that could think differently, solve problems in ways no one had thought of, and ultimately make the world a better place. And so, Primal Core became more than just a tech company. It became a movement that proved you didn't need to follow the rules to change the world. All you needed was a vision, an idea that challenged the status quo, and the courage to see it through. Jaxon had gone from a dropout with a dream to the founder of a global empire, but he didn't stop there. The real work was only just beginning. And as long as there were problems to solve and a world to improve, Jaxon Grey would continue to push the boundaries of what technology could do. The success of Primal Core didn't go unnoticed. Jaxon's story was now a part of tech folklore. People spoke of the dropout who had revolutionized AI with nothing more than his vision, his laptop, and his unwavering belief that there was a better way. Jaxon Grey was a name known not just for his technology, but for his principles, his fight for ethical innovation, and his relentless pursuit of something bigger than just success. Yet, as the company expanded, new challenges arose. With success came scrutiny. Some questioned whether Jackson's vision for ethical AI could scale. Critics argued that the more powerful SimianNet became, the harder it would be to ensure that it remained aligned with its original principles. Could Jaxon maintain control over a technology this powerful? Could he ensure that no one would misuse it for personal gain? Jaxon knew these questions weren't just theoretical, they were real, and they needed answers. He started to get involved in conversations about the future of AI, speaking with policymakers, technologists, and ethicists about how to govern AI development. He didn't want to build just a successful company, he wanted to help shape the very framework for AI's role in society. Jaxon even started to work with global organizations to implement standards for ethical AI, lobbying for policies that would protect both consumers and creators. He pushed for transparency in AI development, advocating for companies to be held accountable for how their technology was used. The issues were complex, but Jaxon felt an overwhelming responsibility to ensure that the technology he had created wouldn't be used to control, manipulate, or harm people. Meanwhile, SimianNet continued to evolve, becoming smarter, more intuitive, and increasingly integrated into critical sectors like healthcare, education, and environmental protection. But every step forward was met with new questions. Who controlled the data that fed the system? What safeguards were in place to prevent biases in decision-making? Was there a risk that AI could become too autonomous? Jackson's role shifted from visionary to guardian. He became a thought leader on AI ethics, dedicating himself to ensuring that technology wasn't just progressing, it was progressing in the right direction. But as much as Jaxon was focused on the future, he never lost sight of where he had come from. His humble beginnings shaped his decisions, and they reminded him of why he had started this journey in the first place, to make a positive difference. He realized that his work was never going to be finished. With every new breakthrough came new questions, new concerns, and new obstacles to overcome. But Jaxon was more determined than ever. He had set out to prove that tech didn't have to be cold, calculated, and exploitative. It could be used to improve lives, to solve real-world problems, and to protect the things that truly mattered. As the years went on, Jackson's influence only grew. His company became a beacon of hope in an industry often marred by greed and corruption. His name became synonymous with responsible innovation, and his work inspired a new generation of tech entrepreneurs who wanted to follow in his footsteps. Jaxon Grey had gone from being a dropout to a tech titan, but his greatest achievement wasn't the billions in revenue or the accolades. It was that he had created something that could genuinely change the world, something that could make technology not just smarter, but kinder. And as long as he was breathing, Jaxon knew he would keep fighting to ensure that the technology of the future served humanity, not the other way around. The story of Jaxon Grey and Primal Core was far from over. It was only just beginning.